There is a strange kind of courage in trying to make peace with life, to accept calmly whatever comes. The Stoics called it apatheia, not the deadness of feeling, but the mastery of it. They taught that storms will come, and your power lies in becoming the still point in the hurricane. And for centuries, this philosophy was a lifeline for soldiers, rulers, and ordinary people enduring the chaos of existence. But then, centuries later, a man named Friedrich Nietzsche looked at Stoicism, this noble, rational refuge, and saw something profoundly troubling. He accused it not of strength, but of resignation, not of bravery, but of denial. To him, Stoicism was a way of saying yes to life by pretending life was something else entirely. Imagine two people standing before a roaring sea. The Stoic says, "The waves are inevitable. Make yourself as stone so they cannot move you." Nietzsche says, "The waves are inevitable, so why not leap in? Let them toss you, drown you, and resurrect you until you learn to swim with their fury." This is the tension we explore today between controlling life and letting life transform you, between the wisdom of detachment and the dangerous, intoxicating embrace of chaos. Nietzsche's rejection of Stoicism was not an abstract academic quarrel, it was deeply personal, a revolt against any philosophy that he believed tried to smooth over life's raw edges. For him, the very things the Stoics warned against, excess, pain, passion, tragedy, were not obstacles to overcome. They were the fire in which the soul forges its shape. In this journey, we will explore 6 revelations that emerge from Nietzsche's critique, lessons that will challenge how you think about control, suffering, and the purpose of living. Some may inspire you, some may unsettle you, and some may force you to ask whether you have been shielding yourself from the very experiences that would make you fully alive. By the end, you may find yourself standing again before that roaring sea, wondering whether you will be the rock or the swimmer who surrenders to the waves. On a crisp winter morning in ancient Rome, the philosopher Emperor Marcus Aurelius walked alone through the palace gardens. It is said that even in the depths of imperial power, he practiced imagining the loss of everything, his crown, his children, his own life, so that when fate took them, it could not wound him beyond repair. This was the Stoic art of control. Master your mind, and the world loses its power over you. It's a vision of strength that has appealed to countless people across history, especially in times of chaos. When the world is unpredictable, the promise of becoming unshakable feels like freedom itself. But Nietzsche looked at this promise and saw a paradox. He argued that the Stoics' fortress of control is not built to keep danger out, it is built to keep life out. The moment we decide that certain emotions, desires, and risks are too dangerous to let in, we are not freeing ourselves. We are curating life, trimming away the wild, unpredictable parts that make it truly alive. In Beyond Good and Evil, Nietzsche accused the Stoics of trying to live according to nature only after redefining nature to suit their philosophy, turning it into something orderly, predictable, and manageable. To him, this was like planting a forest but pruning every tree into the same neat shape. Beautiful, yes, but also lifeless in its perfection. He believed control can be intoxicating because it feels like self mastery, but in reality, it can become a golden cage. It is safe, it is beautiful, but it is still a cage. And cages, no matter how lovely, are meant to keep things from flying. Think of your own life. Perhaps there are dreams you never pursued because they threatened your stability. Relationships you kept at arm's length because they might shake your composure. Opportunities you rejected because they carried risk. In each case, the choice may have protected you, but it may also have fenced you in. Nietzsche's challenge is this: what if the very chaos you are guarding against is the chaos that would have transformed you? What if the self you are protecting so carefully is the old self, the one that must be broken for the new one to emerge? So the question lingers: do you truly have control, or has control quietly taken hold of you? In the winter of 180 AD, the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius sat in a cold military camp, pen in hand, writing in his private journal what would later become meditations. His empire was fraying: plague in the cities, enemies at the borders, political rivals at home. Yet in those pages, he speaks not of rage or fear, but of the quiet discipline to meet each event as if it were chosen. A storm, to Marcus, was not something to fight. It was an opportunity to remain unmoved. This was the Stoic ideal. You cannot control the world, but you can control your response. Anger, fear, elation, despair, they are all inner weather, and the wise man does not let the weather decide his path. For many, this is liberating. In a chaotic world, control of the self is a fortress. You are no longer at the mercy of the insults of others, the shifting winds of fortune, or the tides of your own mood. But Nietzsche looks at that fortress and sees something else: a gilded prison. To him, a life too tightly controlled risks becoming bloodless. A bird in a beautiful cage is still caged, no matter how comfortable. Where the Stoics flatten the peaks and valleys of emotional life into a steady plane, Nietzsche asks, what if those very peaks and valleys are where the soul grows? He writes in Beyond Good and Evil that every great philosophy is the confession of its originator, a personal strategy for survival, mistaken for a universal truth. In other words, Stoicism may have been Marcus Aurelius's shield, but why should your life be lived behind another man's armor? Control, Nietzsche warns, can seduce you into mistaking safety for vitality. You become so good at not being shaken that you forget what it feels like to be moved. You reject chaos, but chaos is the very force that remakes you. Perhaps, he suggests, a better question than how can I remain unmoved is what is worth being moved by. In the year 65 AD, the Stoic philosopher Seneca was ordered by Emperor Nero to take his own life. Seneca did not protest. He met the moment with calm acceptance, even offering words of comfort to his grieving friends as he opened his veins. It was the ultimate Stoic demonstration that dignity and composure could outlast even the approach of death. For the Stoics, this was the ideal: to endure what cannot be changed, to meet suffering with the stillness of a statue, untouched by the chaos around it. Nietzsche admired the courage in this, but found it incomplete. To him, endurance alone was too passive. Why simply withstand suffering, when suffering could be the very chisel that carves your strength, your vision, your individuality? In his writings, especially The Gay Science and Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Nietzsche introduced the idea of amor fati, the love of fate, not resignation to what happens, but a radical, almost defiant embrace of it. It is the difference between gritting your teeth through the storm and throwing your arms wide to feel every lash of rain. This, Nietzsche believed, transforms suffering from a burden into a forge. Pain ceases to be a random cruelty of the universe and becomes the raw material from which you shape yourself. The illness that breaks your body may give birth to deeper insight. The betrayal that wounds you may ignite a will you never knew you had. The loss that hollows you out may make space for a new form of meaning to grow. Nietzsche's Sepp's challenge is dangerous: to not merely survive suffering, but to welcome it as necessary. To see each wound not as a scar to be hidden, but as the signature of the sculptor's hand upon your life. And so the question shifts: not how can I avoid pain, but what kind of person will I become because of it? In the bustling marketplaces of ancient Athens, Stoic teachers would often remind their students: beware the passions. They are like unruly horses. They will drag you where you do not wish to go. For the Stoics, emotions like rage, infatuation, and envy were storms in the soul. They cloud judgment, enslave reason, and make a person easy prey for manipulation. Better to rein them in, they said, and guide life by the steady hand of logic. There is undeniable wisdom in this. Passions can destroy. History is filled with kings, leaders, and ordinary people whose lives unraveled because they followed desire into ruin. The Stoics saw this clearly, and their warning is worth hearing. But Nietzsche takes a dangerous step further. What if those storms are not merely hazards to avoid, but raw forces to be harnessed? What if, in our attempt to subdue the passions, we also kill the spark that makes life electric? In The Birth of Tragedy, Nietzsche draws on the ancient Greek division between the Apollonian order, reason, form, and the Dionysian ecstasy, chaos, intoxication. The Stoics, he argues, lean almost entirely Apollonian, craving symmetry, calm, and control. But human greatness, he insists, often requires the Dionysian, the willingness to be consumed by something so deeply that it transforms you. A great love may bring heartbreak. A burning ambition may end in failure. A creative vision may pull you into obsession. But these very risks are what make the pursuit worthwhile. Passion is a dangerous teacher because it does not care for your safety. It will expose your weaknesses, test your limits, and sometimes break you. Yet in doing so, it also reveals the depths you could never reach from the shore of calm detachment. Nietzsche's Sepp's challenge is this: do not live so carefully that you forget what it means to burn. For a fire that never risks consuming you will never truly warm you. Picture a man standing in the rain. The Stoic stands tall, shoulders back, accepting every drop with silent dignity. The rain cannot hurt him because he does not resist it. This is the image of Stoic endurance, the quiet nobility of living according to nature, as Marcus Aurelius urged. Nietzsche looks at this figure and sees something admirable, but incomplete. Why, he asks, should you merely stand in the rain when you could dance in it? For Nietzsche, life is not a test of how much you can tolerate. It is a dance, messy, unpredictable, and wild. The point is not to weather the music until it stops, but to throw yourself into its rhythm until you are exhausted and alive. Here, his concept of eternal recurrence becomes central. Imagine that every moment of your life, every joy, every sorrow, every ordinary Tuesday would repeat again and again for eternity. If this were true, would you curse your existence, or would you shout for the music to play on? Stoicism often counsels acceptance of fate, amor fati in its calmer form. Nietzsche radicalizes this into a celebration of fate, to not merely accept what is, but to love it so fiercely that you would choose it endlessly. This is not naive optimism. Nietzsche was no stranger to illness, loss, and disappointment, but he believed that when you embrace life as a dance, you stop waiting for the real life to begin after the pain ends. You find the meaning within the steps, even the awkward, painful, chaotic ones. The Stoic says, endure the rain with dignity. Nietzsche says, find a way to make it part of your dance. And so the question emerges, if life will not slow down for you, will you merely keep your footing, or will you learn to move with its music? On a quiet mountainside, a young athlete trains for the Olympic Games. Every morning before sunrise, she runs the same grueling path, lungs burning, legs aching, the cold cutting into her skin. She tells herself, one day this will be worth it. The Stoics would nod in approval. For them, hardship is a path to virtue, and virtue leads to the tranquil mind. The struggle is tolerated for the sake of what lies beyond it, the reward, the calm, the moral fortitude. Nietzsche, however, would challenge this framing. Why must the meaning of effort be deferred to the future? Why see the struggle as a toll you pay for some later prize, when the struggle itself could be the prize? In The Will to Power in Twilight of the Idols, Nietzsche argues that life's value is found not in its outcomes, but in its intensities. It is the climb, not the summit, that defines you. The hours of exertion, the failures, the repeated returns to the starting line. These are not just steps toward meaning, they are meaning. When we place meaning after the struggle, we risk living most of our lives in a kind of waiting room. We endure, hoping for a future where everything will justify the pain. But if that day never comes, what then? Nietzsche's perspective frees us from that deferred life. He invites us to stop treating hardship as a temporary passage and start treating it as the very texture of living. The joy is not in being finished, but in being in it, alive, striving, sweating, and changing in the process. Think of the artist who paints not for the finished canvas, but for the hours when the world disappears under the hum of brush and color. Think of the climber who loves the rope burns and trembling muscles as much as the view from the top. The question becomes, if meaning is always postponed until the end, have you already missed the richest part of the story? A potter holds a flawless vase, freshly fired, in her hands. Its surface is smooth, its form perfect, and yet she knows it will never hold more than it can now. The only way to expand it, to reshape it, is to risk breaking it. The Stoics valued steadfastness, to be unshakable, like a fortress against the tempests of life. This stability protects identity, preserves dignity, and offers the comfort of constancy. But Nietzsche wonders, if we never risk the collapse of what we are, how can we ever become more than we are? In Ecce Homo and Thus Spoke Zarathustra, he returns again and again to the idea of self-overcoming, the process by which the self must sometimes shatter in order to evolve. The breakdown is not merely destruction, it is the opening through which a larger, stronger self can emerge. We see this in nature. A seed must split for the plant to grow. A snake must shed its skin, leaving behind the old to move into the new. The caterpillar dissolves entirely before becoming a butterfly. None of these transformations are comfortable. All of them involve a kind of death. For Nietzsche, a life lived only within safe limits may be calm, but it is not alive in the fullest sense. Avoiding the risk of breaking means avoiding the possibility of rebirth. This is perhaps where he and the Stoics diverge most sharply. The Stoics would have you hold your shape against the blows of fate. Nietzsche would have you let those blows remake you, even if it means the temporary loss of everything you recognize as you. To live fully, then, is to place yourself in situations where you might be undone by love, by art, by ambition, by the sheer force of living. It is to say, I am willing to risk who I am for the chance to become who I could be. And so the question lingers, when the hammer falls, will you only brace yourself, or will you let it strike you into a new form? So we return to the image we began with, two people before the roaring sea. The Stoic stands as a rock, unmoved by the waves. Nietzsche dives in, surrendering to the current, letting the water batter tumble and reshape him. Both are courageous in their own way, but the difference lies in what they believe life is for. For the Stoic, life's highest aim is virtue and tranquility, a mind untroubled, a soul in harmony with nature. For Nietzsche, life's highest aim is intensity, to burn brightly, to grow through the storms, to dance with fate until the last note fades. Across this journey, we have uncovered 6 insights from Nietzsche Sif's critique. Control is a beautiful cage. Safety without transformation is a life half lived. Suffering is not a threat, it's the sculptor. Pain shapes us if we let it. Passion is a dangerous teacher and a necessary one. Without the fire, there is no creation. Life is not to be endured, it's to be danced with. To love fate is to choose it endlessly. Meaning is born in the struggle, not after it. The climb itself is the reward. To live fully, you must risk breaking. Self overcoming requires the courage to shatter. None of this means the Stoics were wrong. Their wisdom has carried countless souls through storms they might not have survived otherwise. But Nietzsche warns us not to make tranquility our only horizon. For if you aim only to avoid being broken, you may also avoid being transformed. The choice, then, is deeply personal. Will you craft your life as a fortress, protecting its shape against the unpredictable? Or will you step into the chaos, risking yourself for the chance to become something greater than you can yet imagine? I cannot answer that for you, but I will leave you with this. One day, perhaps sooner than you think, life will confront you with a moment where you can remain unmoved, or you can leap into the waves. In that instant, remember Nietzsche Sif's challenge: become who you are. If these reflections stirred something in you, consider subscribing. Each week, we explore questions that don't just fill the mind, but challenge the soul. Share your thoughts in the comments, not for me, but for the others who are standing, like you, before their own sea. Because these are not just ideas, they are invitations. And somewhere out there, the music is already playing.